I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know when we're gonna um I don't know when we're gonna return to normal, so I better get some fucking equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, people. This is a nice setup. I got it from Amazon. I think I don't even know what fucking brand it is, but um, I have no idea. I have no clue about podcasting whatsoever. And when I googled it and like looked it up, some
Yeah.
of the shit was so advanced. I was like, I just want something to plug into my computer.
Yeah. It's
You know.
I mean, you can go down a lot of rabbit holes for podcasting, and I did a local one for about 5 years before I started this one, and
Mm,
I had it down, and then they released this Rode podcaster, the big soundboard that does all the bells and whistles and records right on
yeah.
board and stuff like that. And I had to have that, so I got that, and then I went and splurged on the Rode mic, which is really good because a lot of times my wife's home when I'm recording, and she'll be in the next room working out, or she'll be doing laundry or something like that, and this mic picks up none of that. It just picks up my voice. So it's
That's
good
good.
when you can spend that money, but so far I haven't made any money to make up for it, so it's just all my personal stuff being dumped into it.
Right. Yeah, it's my friend just told me about the new Rode mic thing, like the whatever it is, and he was like, "You got it." It was my first time, like I said, this thing is completely foreign to me, but at least it just plugs in, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, but he was like, "Man, you got to look into this." And as soon as I googled, it was like $700 or something like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah.
It looked awesome, all the bells and whistles and shit and whatever, but I
Yeah.
was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to be able
Right.
to, but of course I also at the time when I bought it didn't realize, I think it was like March. So I was like, this may not last that long.
Yeah.
Of
Y
course, now here we are.
the funny thing is, though, there are a lot of good podcasts that people just record on their phone too, so it's not
Mm,
you don't have to spend a ton of money. I've got a
right.
friend that just started one. He's got a mic that goes into his phone somehow, and he does it that way. So,
Right.
it's I'm kind of a stickler for decent sound and nice editing and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna um not listen to a podcast because it's just not recorded as good as mine. So,
Yeah.
I'm not stuck up like that. So
I
anyway,
had a, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Oh,
we're
we're live.
live, and I'm here with John Poveromo, and I tell you what, I didn't know anything about you when your agent came at me, but now I know. I think I know everything, and I'm really glad he sent me the email because I've learned some stuff like right from the beginning, and I don't know. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I watched Duppet, but I also watched some of your sets,
Hmm.
and the DC Improv set. It's about an 11-minute set. I watched that,
Oh
and
boy.
I feel like I've watched it, I think, 3 times, and I feel like it's like a as far as structure and comedy goes, it's like a 101. And the content's the big thing, but the way you did it is like everybody teaches. So you come on with a good one to begin with, and you
Hmm.
talk about yourself. So you talk about being from Jersey, and then you do some rapid fire, and then you've got the crowd then, and then you can do a little bit longer setups for the punch, and then you get a little bit more personal as it goes on, and it's really a 101 type set right there on YouTube. So I
Hmm.
and when I say 101, some comics say they don't like that. Lost your video for a second. They don't like that, but I just thought it was kind of a revelation that like what everybody teaches is right there, and you did it.
Wow. Well, thank you. I mean, um, I thank you. I'm just gonna take I'm not gonna take in compliments, but
Yeah,
yeah, I guess that's just how I learned. I learned to build a set over time, just watching other comics do that kind of stuff. And you're right though. It is kind of like about getting the audience on your side right away before you get into anything too heavy. I think like for now, like sometimes the fun of it is, like I knew I was taping that set and I wanted it, I think I was showing it to something at the time or whatever it was. So I wanted it to kind of build that way.
Mhm.
But sometimes the fun of it is actually going up with the heaviest thing you want to talk about first,
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
going like, let's see what happens. But yeah, I think thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, it was very well put together, and then I went back and watched an earlier set. I think it was uploaded in 2013, and I was able to take the two, and I'm like, "Yep, he's better." He was
Yeah,
good. He was good in that one, but you can tell he's grown as a comedian, so that's great.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if I honestly, I always talk about, you know, like the progression of it or whatever. And I think if you're just not growing or if you haven't gotten better, like if you watch your sets back in the day and there's no real change, then
mhm,
I'd say just pack it in after a certain time. But it is cool to see that. It's funny that you say that too because my YouTube page is almost like a fucking ghost town. Like I just didn't like I never kept up with it really, and I feel like it was to me it was just there not to gain followers or anything like that in particular, but it was just if I needed a set online or
yeah,
I needed something taped, that's where I threw it up.
yeah,
So it is kind of funny that there's a bunch of old shit on there. I think for the longest time too, I had my first set ever that
mhm,
was just kind of public, like it's still
yeah,
hanging on there because I think it was from when I started in like 2005 or something like that.
mhm,
And I was like, I should probably mute that just in case anybody's. And I mean, now I don't really give a shit because I'm already in where I want to be in and stuff like that. But I think in the like midway point, I was like, why is that fucking still on there? Like that's super
right,
ridiculous.
right. And some comics don't even want stuff from a couple years ago up there because they don't want to be compared to that
Right.
stuff. And I'm the same way with YouTube. I use mine as more of a repository than something that I wanted people to see. And now I'm trying to get it to where people see it, and that's tough. It's tough to build an audience in YouTube. I found out Instagram and Facebook and Twitter are a lot
Hmm.
easier.
Yeah, I like Instagram a lot more than I like anything. I mean, Facebook and stuff is cool. I've got like a fan page and a regular page or whatever. Fan page is also sometimes more of a ghost town, but I rarely ever use those. Like I'll promote my stuff on there once in a while, but I kind of just throw out whatever political shit I feel like throwing out there
Mhm.
and talking about and kind of use it almost as like a writing exercise too, and going back and forth with people or whatever is fun. But the Instagram is where I really like to put up comedy stuff,
Yeah.
whatever I want to throw up there. And then I also realized too at a certain point, like I'm not too much of a fan of giving away too much material either. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, but because of the way I work when I'm on stage and stuff, and I like to be very playful with the audience and kind of off the cuff and do like crowd work intermittently in my sets and stuff like that. If I can
Mhm.
find a good chunk of that, I'll throw that up on Instagram or whatever because people enjoy that just as much as anything else.
Right.
And that way I don't have to actually give away any material, for free. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's good. I like doing that way than I like doing it better than I like, posting full sets.
Right, yeah, and I watch how people, especially my wife, how they use social media, and people tend to spend a lot more time on Instagram than they do Facebook. It's like a quick scroll on Facebook and then Instagram because there's videos and stories and stuff
Hmm.
real easy to get to. They tend to spend more time, and she's always showing me stuff on Instagram and very rarely shows me anything on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I feel like Instagram is way less hateful than any of the other apps,
yeah, yeah,
social media apps. You know what I mean?
right,
I get way less of a headache scrolling through people's, pictures of food and stand up clips and,
yeah.
vacations and shit than I do on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. I actually follow the hashtag stand up and the hashtag comedian just so I can see stuff from people I don't know. So it's really nice and it's easy to use
Hmm.
rather than scrolling through all the crap on Facebook. So let's talk about
Right.
comedy for you. Let's take it back to the beginning. When you were a kid, did you want to be a comic?
Oh, there's a weird. I can't hear you anymore. Is that
Oh,
me
I
or is
mean,
that you?
it might be a little bit of the
Yeah, I
feed.
can see your lips moving, but I cannot hear you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, I can hear you. Just a sec.
Um,
Is that any better?
no.
How about now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. I, I sometimes StreamYard just fucks up, and I have to take myself out and put myself back in.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, I was
So
just like,
the question,
oh.
back to the question. When you were a kid, did you want to be a comic?
Yeah, I mean, not when I was like super young. I don't think I knew what stand up was, but I always had an idea. Like, I always wanted to be, I like being the funny kid. Uh, and I wasn't like class clown, like pull your pants down funny. Like there was one of those already. I was the, kid in the back of the room, kind of whispering at what a crock of shit this whole thing
Yeah.
was. I'm like, oh my god, like fucking school is weird, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what's this guy talking about?
Yeah.
So I was like kind of quietly funny among friends, and then like it would kind of get around that I was funny from other people and stuff like
Mm,
that. I appreciated the guy who pulled his pants down. I was like, that is performance art, and I get it, and it's a
yeah.
good distraction. But I didn't really want to get thrown to the principal's office or anything like that either. So I was like, I was always just very like, this is a bunch of bullshit, or
Uh,
whatever. But I did love comedy, and I loved comedians, and my whole family kind of loved the comedy and movies and stuff like that too. And like my grandfather loved stand up and he loved Johnny Carson. So like he would show me tapes and stuff. So I always had like an interest. I think the first time too was like I loved Robin Williams when I was a kid,
mm,
and I didn't know, like I wanted to know everything about him, and then I found out that he was a comedian, and I was like, what the fuck's a comedian? And then then I was kind of like a gateway drug. After that, I was just like, oh, everyone that I like, Ellen is a comedian, and because she had that TV show for a while.
mhm.
Everybody that was hugely funny started out doing stand up, so
Right.
I kind of got into it through that.
Now, any particular ones that really got you, and you said, "I want to be like them"?
Robin Williams
Yeah.
was one of the ones that I kind of think why I like to mess with the audience and stuff like
Mm,
that on stage, or I kind of think a little faster or whatever. And yeah, Robin, Ellen. When I was a kid, obviously Seinfeld, because
mm,
everybody that had a TV show, I think back in the day, I thought was hugely funny. And Gary Shandling was amazing. Um, yeah, like all those guys when I was younger. I had all their books.
mm,
Love Home Improvement, love Tim Allen.
mhm.
Uh, they were really really funny to me. And
Right.
like a lot of like even like Bill Maher, I remember being in the specials that came out when I was in high school were like Ellen DeGeneres is the beginning, Bill Maher, Be More Cynical, and like Lewis Black. I like all like around those years, like when I was in high school,
Mhm.
and they kind of really made me feel less alone
Right.
for whatever,
Yeah.
because they were adults talking about shit that I was thinking as a kid and reaffirming, because you weren't getting that in none of the adults that you knew in school were talking about anything like that.
Right. And your parents don't say that kind of stuff either because they don't
Mm-mm.
want to traumatize their kid.
Yeah, and not even that. Ellen is. You know what I found. Like, I like the subversiveness of all stand-ups. I think
Yeah.
I like the underlying layer of life isn't meant to be taken that seriously, and um, a lot of kind of frivolity. Like even Bill Maher's when he was doing Be More Cynical, whatever he had a lot of very strong ideas about religion and law enforcement and stuff that you didn't hear from your fucking teachers at the time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same about those types of specials. It's the stuff that, like you said, the adults around you just don't. They're not going to give you that because it's a little bit too subversive and
Hmm. And
afraid.
it's nice. Yeah, and it's nice to hear about, and it's nice to see adults talking about failure. Like comics are able to talk about stuff. Obviously, they're wildly successful when they're doing it too. But like it's nice to see just grown people talking about not doing well, failing at life, failing in
Mhm.
school when they or whatever, and still. It was comedians and cartoonists I always had an affinity for. I always wanted to be a cartoonist too, and I do draw cartoons and stuff like that. But I remember when I was in school, I used to write because I thought cartooning for some reason was way more attainable than comedy. Like I
Mhm.
was always a funny kid, but I could draw, so I was like, I'll just do that. I'll just be funny and draw my dumb cartoons.
Mhm.
And I remember writing certain. This is what writing looks like, by the way. I don't know why I just did that.
Yeah.
But I did email a bunch of cartoonists and stuff like that, and literally, I was horrible at math when I was in school.
Uh-huh.
So I remember emailing them, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have to be good at math to be cartoonists?" And they'd be like, "No." And they were like, "No." But it was kind of funny too, because some of them were very much either like, "No, dude, I fucking sucked when I was in school," or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, and other people would also be way more cautious because they, how hard it is to do what they do. So they
Yeah.
would be like, "No, but also stay in school." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you could tell they were like they knew they were talking to a kid at the time, so they were like, "Let's just not, just fucking learn your math and do your best." And
Yeah. Yeah.
but they would also be like, "But also, no, I don't know a goddamn thing."
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I've got two kids, and one of them is a math genius, and the other one wouldn't do math to save her soul. So
Mm.
it's it's funny to have one like that, and he's actually a rocket scientist. So
Oh,
that's what they do. That's what he does. And
but like that's the coolest shit to me, though. You know what I mean? Like that is so unattainable to me because I don't, basic math, obviously, but like all that other stuff, like I have no. Once it started getting with letters and
yeah,
the
yeah,
what ifs and all that other shit, I was like, I'm tapping out. I got
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Uh, but that stuff amazes me. Like my friend's a mathematician, and he's
Mhm.
and he's so fucking good with all the numbers and stuff. And I go to him a lot if I ever
Yeah,
actually if I have a question about statistics and numbers and all that other shit.
yeah.
But
What's the
yeah.
hypotenuse of this triangle? Help me out here.
Oh, dude, yeah. And that's another thing too. When you're in school, man, they never tell you that your like when you're a kid, you think your parents know the shit that you're learning,
Yeah,
and then as you get older and you realize no one like my greatest joy was finding out my English teachers were also fucking retarded when it came to math.
yeah,
Because you just assume everybody kind of gets it, but
yeah,
I just remember them going like, "Oh no, man, I don't know shit." I'm like, "Well,
yeah.
isn't that the shit?" Like. And but math teachers want to double down on how because no one they want to be taken seriously for what they do
Right.
and stuff like that. So they really try to push it into your head that if you don't know this shit, you're gonna be pumping gas.
Yep. Yep.
So
So you talked about doing the visual arts, the cartooning. So
mhm.
that was kind of your first spark into the art world. How did that work out for you prior to being going into stand up?
I gave it up. I stopped doing it pretty quickly. Like I drew. I never got anything really published, anything big. Like it would be like local, paper or whatever. If I drew a cartoon or something like that, I
Hmm.
think I drew for the school paper for a little bit. But I kind of gave that up pretty quickly. And once I realized I wanted to do stand up,
Hmm.
like after high school, and I would draw constantly, and I think I had like ideas for comic strips, and I still have them all like all drawn out, set up, and stuff. But I really liked I tried doing stand up and I really liked being on stage and I kind of stopped drawing for like a few years when I was doing
Hmm.
stand up. Like I mean I would doodle, but as far as any of that cartoon stuff and then
Hmm.
somewhere like middle of my stand up career I was like I had ideas that I thought would be better as strips
Hmm.
or single panel cartoons or whatever that didn't necessarily work on stage. So I started to like, pass the time in hotel rooms or whatever. I would draw my cartoons and post them online, and um, it worked out into a book. So that was pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, and that's a book I want to check out. That is Drawings from a Nobody, and
Yes,
that looks like something I would like to read and probably identify with. So yeah, I'm going to check that
I'll
out.
send you a copy.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem.
so thinking about your first um, time on stage, what prompted you to get on stage to do the stand up?
Um, a, a few things I didn't want to be in. I was in college for a year, and I hated. I hated it. I didn't really want to go in the first place. My one of my friends who just passed away this year actually. She could play like every instrument, uh, just immediately, like amazing pianist, singer, all this other stuff. And she immediately after high school knew she wanted to go out to LA, and she
Mm.
knew I wanted to do stand up, and we would kind of talk about that kind of stuff. And she had always kind of pushed me to do it. She wanted me to leave, and she wanted me to go with her, and all this other stuff. And I was terrified to. I give her full props for like knowing exactly what she wanted, what she should do. But I was, dating somebody at the time. All my friends were going off to college. It felt like the thing I had to do not to fuck up my own life.
Mm.
But the more I was in it, I was so fucking miserable, just unbelievably miserable. And at one point, um, I think my mom and my stepdad were just like, "Hey, why don't you try doing stand up?" Like they actually found they saw some kind of advertisement for a comedy school or a class or whatever, and they were like, "Why don't you go do it? It's 6 months or no, it wasn't 6 months. I can't remember. That's a long time. I don't remember what it was exactly. I was like 6 months, but it was amazing. For me anyway,
Mm.
because I mean, there was like 30 people in there, and it's funny because I just went on a show out in Chicago. My friend has a show. I think it's called Nightcap. She's gonna hate me, but she and I started in that class together, and she and I
Oh,
are the
okay.
only two that are still doing it and pretty much thriving
Hmm.
as much as we can. As much as we can. I mean, you know what I mean? No one. I'm not a household name or anything, but like we're still doing it and
Hmm.
making money doing it. So yeah, we were the only ones that were in it or whatever. But that
What's
was
her
like
name,
the
by the way?
first. Her name is Erica Watson.
Okay, I've heard that name.
Yeah.
I'm close enough to Chicago. I keep an
Oh,
eye on
okay.
the Chicago
She's
scene.
fantastic. You should
Yeah.
have her on here if you get a chance. But yeah, she and I we stayed close. We talk when we were on the road and stuff. We were doing it. But yeah, that was it. I was completely and totally miserable doing anything else. And then once I did stand up and did my first show, that was it. I was like, I'm done doing anything else.
Mm.
Uh, I wanted to invest in myself in a way. I mean, people go to college to invest in themselves for the most part, I think, or to party or to have that experience or whatever. But I decided it would be the same if I invested, 10 years into doing stand up. By the time I was 30, I'd be where I wanted to, essentially where I wanted to be, or as good as I was, wanted to be
Mm.
at it. And I wanted to do that as opposed to anything else.
So you do the first set, and you've taken some classes and stuff like that. What was your first
Hmm.
time on stage like?
It was good. It was this. There is the clip. I think it's still online. But it was good. I had a good set. I had a good time on stage. Um, uh, I was nervous, and I addressed it at the time. Like I think from that first set, you can kind of see where my ability to talk to the audience comes on stage. Because when I am, that way, it's kind of like it kind of just came out. So I like
Mm.
breezed through the jokes that I had that were supposed to last me 5 minutes, but I didn't pace myself at all.
Yeah.
And it was whatever. But you can like the audience was with me, and um, even the woman who taught the class. There was one funny moment between us where I literally like I took my notes out on stage because I was doing it with Adam, but I didn't have anything left.
Yeah.
And I'm like kind of like you can see my hand shaking, and I addressed that I'm shaking, and the audience laughs or whatever. And I just kind of put it on the stool, and I was like, well, I don't think I have anything else. I'm like, I was like, I think her name was Linda Smith who ran the class, and I was like, Linda told me she'd show me the red light if I went over time, and she just knew she could do this with me. She was like, "You're not over," and I was like, "Thanks."
Yeah.
And like just the spontaneity of the whole thing. So it was a really fun thing to do, and I had a great set, and it was the next set I bombed. Like it was such a fluke. Like
Yeah.
anything, I think any comic you talk to that tells you they had a good first set, they tell you how like I can't think of the word trying to think of, but it sets you up in a way that's like gives you a little too much confidence.
Oh, yeah.
because like I did 5 minutes or whatever and like breezed through the set, and then I got another gig after that, and somebody got bumped or somebody didn't make it or whatever, and they were like, "Hey, can you do 10 minutes?" And I was like, "Yeah, and 10 minutes is fine." And I could not, and I
Yeah.
fucking ate it. I mean, and my friends were there for that one too, because at the time, bringer shows were like, you know, the scam. I mean, that's
Right.
still running, but it's a fucking scam or whatever. And I brought my friends, and we all went into New York, and we went out to eat, and because they didn't go to the first show that I did, so they were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we all this
Yeah.
group was like, we want to come," and I was like, let's go," and I fucking ate it, and that
Yeah.
was the beginning of essentially learning how to bomb too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny that when you do have that good first set, it just makes that. I mean, the next set almost always sucks. I mean, I haven't known anybody that has had a great second set. And when
Yeah,
you're cocky from the first one, it makes it just tragic. I mean,
yeah,
you just want to go home, get under the covers, and never come out. And
yeah. Because the high and the sense of relief of your first set going well is unimaginably like it's great.
Mhm.
And I still and the funny thing is I don't like I've had really great sets and fun times and open for, really big comics and all this stuff, but there's something about, the first set where you do if you do really well or whatever, I you cannot match that fucking because there's naivety,
Mhm.
there's you're young, so you think this is fucking great. And the room was packed too. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like it was like 12, 15 people. It was all of, it was like it was a packed room. It was Caroline's and for whatever reason, like, you never know if the rest of your peers are going to bring people out or whatever. But for the most part, I had one small table of people I knew, and
Mhm.
the rest of the entire room was strangers.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just can't beat that fucking high.
Yeah.
And it's still every time I used to think about that. I used to think about, wow, you cannot fucking match that.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So most comics that I talk to say that the first year is kind of pivotal on how their career goes. Can you
Hmm.
tell me just obviously don't go day by day, but what was your first year like after you did that?
Um, it was hit and miss all the time. I mean, I don't remember it too well, but I used the tape that I did for my first set to get other work. Like I figured out, what you needed to do. Um, and I lived in New Jersey, so I just remember making phone calls and trying to get in everywhere I possibly could, and
Mhm.
and trying to keep the memory of I can do this. I did do this. I just need to keep that shit going or whatever. And I think I'd won a couple contests that help you keep going or whatever. But
Mhm.
like intermittently, just it was hit and miss. It was going on stage, bombing, wondering if you could still do it. The only difference is I think, and I tell other comedians when we were younger or whatever to do this kind of shit too, is like, um, you know, if you bomb, just book more gigs. Don't bomb and then wait to heal,
Yeah.
and then whatever. I would just fucking eat a dick on stage, uh, and then immediately like feel just fucking awful about the whole thing, and then for whatever reason, I would go home and I would call five other clubs I'd never been to before,
Mhm.
send them a tape out, and then rebook myself over and over again.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of what that was. I was working at a bank full time, which was not fun,
Yeah.
uh, especially for a comedian or somebody who's trying to be a comedian. And the thing was too is everybody because MySpace was big at the time too, and when you worked somewhere, you friend of your employees. So my MySpace was not a personal one. You know what I mean? Because when I graduated high school, we didn't have Facebook or anything like that.
Mhm.
And then you couldn't get on Facebook unless you had a college thing or whatever, and obviously dropped out, so couldn't do that. And then MySpace was around, so my MySpace was just comedy and my
Mhm.
comedy page, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're." So it was very, it was a little weird.
Yeah. Now, did you start traveling in that first year? Did you get out of
Hmm.
town? So, what types of shows did you do? Were you doing the one nighters and stuff like that?
Some of them, yeah. So I did my kind of like it was weird. I never really had a home club. I started. There was one. I live in Tom's River, New Jersey. So the closest club to me was this one in Point Pleasant. Um, and we wound up having a huge. I left after, I think maybe 2 years or something like that because of you know, guy's not a great guy, but um, it was a very bad situation at a certain point by the end of it, and I had to peace out. And you'll find that a lot. Like everybody knows a comedy club owner that's shitty
Yeah.
or not good to their people or whatever. And it's kind of one of those things like if I become aware of it, I can't do it. And I did work there for a little bit. I did the door there
Mm.
and perform there. But it was very like an ownership thing, like you thought they owned you or whatever. And I was interested in other clubs. I came there from working other clubs. Like one of the guys that was really nice to me, and I'm still close with now, Jason Pollock. He booked Rascals Comedy Club
Okay.
before Rascals went under
Mm.
in I think Cherry Hill, and then Ed Kavanaugh did Montclair. So I got in there, and a buddy of mine, my writing partner now, Vinny Nardiello, got me into those clubs, and then Bananas Comedy Club. So it's weird because those two clubs were basically my home clubs, but they were really far away from me.
Mm.
So I did have to travel to get to them. And then Bananas was the first place I opened for a national. That was like 3 or 4 years in. I opened for Jimmy Fallon, and we did 5 shows together. And
Mm.
then Bananas would book me to open for like bigger comics
Mm.
after that. So that was cool. But I found I would go into New York and do Broadway Comedy Club, which was the Improv back then.
Mm.
Bud Friedman's wife still owned it. And one of the comedians there, James Oakes, who ran one of the shows, liked me enough to take me out on the road. So he and I would drive to gigs together, and I got picked up pretty early, about a year in, and I
Mm.
didn't do bringer shows after that. So I wasn't doing bringer shows for very long, and I was on the road pretty early, which was
Yeah.
invaluable because the road teaches you basically everything.
Right. Right.
My first road gig was in an old ice rink. Not an old, but was in an ice rink like 3 hours away.
Yeah.
In Poughkeepsie. No, in not Poughkeepsie. In oh my god, I can't remember where the hell the place is. Plattsburgh,
Okay.
New York. Yeah, and it's like so close to fucking Canada. But yeah, it was one of my first gigs, and it was in an ice rink, and it was
Yeah.
weird.
It's funny. You talk about ice rinks and roller skating rinks. We've got a roller skating rink that's just about probably 2 or 3 miles away from us. And in the 90s, they used to have bands come in. So 38 Special played the Rainbow Roller Rink, and
No
Jeff
way.
Healy played the Rainbow Roller Rink. And yeah, I got to see both of those, so it was pretty cool. But it was
Wow.
it was kind of surreal that they did bingo most of the time, and then every once in a while they'd have a band.
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of those gigs. We did one time. I was super excited, and he and I drove up to the Catskills. But in my head, I was thinking like Buddy Hackett, like Mortzall Catskill,
Yeah.
like I was like, oh, it's gonna be in a thing, and it's gonna be a huge. And it was literally, I didn't know how much the Catskills have changed, obviously, but it was literally like a fucking barn
Uh-huh.
outside, and like little picnic table bleachers inside this thing, and they were like roasting a pig
Oh, wow.
outside for everybody. And I was just like, I don't know, man. Like that also kind of colored my view of like I would lower my expectations for every gig after that shit
Mhm.
because every time they'd be like, hey, we got a gig in a wherever, I'd be like, oh, it's gonna be awesome. And in my head, I would just always picture a nice venue, and
Mhm.
then I would always be let down, no matter what. Every time. You're like, we're
Yeah,
gonna perform on this bale of hay, and half your audience is cattle. You're like,
yeah. So many of
great.
them are just shitholes, and that's what you have
Yeah,
to do. That's funny.
it does, and it makes you appreciate the really good gigs, like when you do get them, or like an audience that's like decent or anything like that. It just makes those moments. It's weird because I don't remember them, but I remember the bad ones all the time.
Yeah. Do you feel like in that first year you discovered what type of comic you wanted to be?
In the first year, well, I think I don't know about other comedians or whatever, but I think you always kind of know what kind of comic you want to be.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's what you're chasing throughout your career. Like I don't know if anybody ever meets their expectation because you all have your idols, and
Mhm.
you want to live up to that particular standard or whatever. So you just keep striving for it. I think those are the people that stay in the longest. Is the
Mhm.
ones who go. Yeah, I think the minute somebody goes, I'm the new Bill Burr,
Yeah.
then you're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like you're done. Like I think you just keep working towards whatever. But I did know, like I knew what I could be, and what I kind of where I was aimed, what I wanted to be, and I knew when I fell short of it, which was all the time at the beginning. But the thing that kept me going though too is like during those sets, there were moments of who I knew or what kind of a comic I knew I could be within those sets. And the thing was trying to ignite that flame or that spark when I was on stage again. You know what I mean? And that was the chase. Was like, oh my God, there it is. Or like, especially like after you go back home and you watch your set, you know, you're looking at it and you're like, holy shit, there it is right there. That's what I need. And that's what I need to get a control of. So
putting 10 years, giving yourself the goal to put 10 years into this, do you feel like as far as the nuts and bolts of writing are concerned, are you a disciplined writer? Are you somebody who will just wake up at 2 a.m. and start writing shit down, or how does it work for you?
I think no, I'm not a disciplined writer at all. I've tried to sit down and write, and I thought that was the way to do it in the beginning, was to open up your laptop and just start writing and see whatever comes to you. And I've always found that to be insanely disappointing and not, I don't have the attention span for it. But one of the things like a mentor in a comic told me is basically that's, you know, you have to go with the way your brain works. And I'm kind of like a meat and potatoes kind of person where I'll think of a joke or a punchline or whatever the topic is, and I'll write it down in my phone in my notes. And I'll just scroll through, like, I don't think this is dead yet. But I was going to show, like, I just write down whatever it is, and then I'm able to take that either on stage or like when I go to sit, if I actually ever go to sit down and write, I usually wind up going, okay, I've written down just a myriad of shit in my notes, and I'm going to try to organize them and see what's actually there.
Right.
And the same thing with like Twitter and Facebook too. Like that's why I like having those conversations or whatever on there, is because, you know, sometimes something comes off the top of my head or whatever, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a good line, and that can be used to whatever. And I try to read everything, and you know, so my brain just keeps going or whatever. But I cannot, not a disciplined writer at all.
Yeah. Have you found that during this pandemic that it's really hard to write?
No, I've actually been doing okay
Really?
during the pandemic. I mean,
Good for you then.
Yeah, I know I talked to a couple other friends who were like, I just don't feel fun. It feels like it's, you know, something is whatever, which I get. There's a little bit of abnormal shit going on, but I actually kind of found like, because you don't have to worry about booking yourself or road gigs or getting out there or doing whatever, I could lean on other strengths and kind of build, you know, that kind of stuff up, because you know, there are pilots and stuff my friend and I are working on, and other projects or whatever. So you get to lean into that a little bit more.
Right. And you've done some outsourced writing anyway. You've written for shows and things like that. So I imagine that is a different take on writing, because you're either writing for someone or writing on a particular subject. So that makes it a little bit easier, I bet.
It does. I did it for about, I think I did it more than I did stand up at the time, for about 3 years, because it was just there was so much writing to do, you know, and that's how I was making money at that time. So I got to write for a bunch of different stuff. One of the weirdest things was writing sports jokes or sports stuff for comedians or whatever, because I'm not a sports guy. And it was, the odd thing was, is some of the comics that I was writing for at the time, one of them in particular was like, he would call me up on the phone and he would start talking to me about stats or whatever was going on or whatever, kind of whatever. And he'd be like, you know what I'm talking about? You're a sports guy. And I was like, no, I am not.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And I'm like, I don't watch any of this shit. And I've already been writing for him for a while about it. And he was like, I had no idea. And I'm like, well, yeah, this is why it's like, it's weird. It was a challenge, because it's still jokes. You know what I mean? You're still writing jokes regardless, but mine always came kind of off to the side and never really. I had a guy who was a friend, who was a sports writer at the time. So if it ever got too heavy or too involved with it, I would call him and be like, hey, why do they hate this guy? And what is it called when when they do like a thing? And he'd be like, Jesus. Like, you know, because I'm just not that type of guy. I just don't. I like playing stuff. Like I like, I used to play sports outside or whatever, and
Yeah,
maybe tennis and some shit. But fuck, man, I don't know
right.
anything about it.
I'm
I've been
exact.
to games. I
Yeah,
enjoy being outdoors and eating ice cream out of a hat.
yeah,
I enjoy that stuff. But
yeah.
yeah,
I will never be a sports guy or pick a team or anything like that. I'll watch a Super Bowl just for the commercials, but
me too.
it's not.
I'll watch a Super Bowl because I like parties and food
Yeah,
and
yeah, no doubt.
like that was the fun part is talking to
Uh,
people or whatever and screaming on a TV. My sports are election season and anything to do with superheroes or
yeah,
I get it. Like I totally get the and I know that like most sports people don't see it the other way because it's man shit. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
that's what they get off on, but it's the same shit. I've got my
yeah,
team, except my team is, the fucking Hulk and and I watched all 22 Marvel movies. I can quote that shit. I love Jurassic Park. Like, I get the
uh-huh,
fantasy element of it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
that's
I get fifth man shit. I wanted to
yeah,
come out of one of those portals during the fight with Thanos.
uh-huh. So you're talking Marvel, but you're wearing a Wonder Woman T-shirt. Do you lean more towards DC or Marvel?
No, I lean more towards Marvel. I
Yeah.
just it has my it's the new. I love Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's
Uh,
awesome, and it's a shirt that I got in the mail, and I subscribed to this thing or whatever. But it's the year I was born too, 1984. So that's a new movie coming out. Wonder
mhm,
Woman's the only decent DC movie. I love the movies. Like I'll go to see any superhero movie. I'm not like a dick about it.
mhm,
I think the Marvel movies are better, but a Wonder Woman was phenomenal, and the new one looks fucking awesome. It's got Kristen Wiig in it,
mhm.
and somebody else.
Yeah,
Chris Pine. That's what I was thinking. I was like, who the fuck is that guy?
yeah. Have you ever had the opportunity to do any work for Marvel? There was a snippet I saw, and they mentioned Marvel, but you were working for a smaller outfit at the time.
Yeah, I would love that would be amazing. I would do
Yeah,
whatever they fucking wanted me to do. I
yeah,
would die in a scene. I would be a toe tag in a scene. I would do whatever they needed me to do. Guy who
uh,
gets crushed by a building, whatever. But no, I've never gotten to do any work for them, and I don't think I'm at the level art wise of my stuff's more cartoony, so I don't know
mhm,
what they would ever use me for
mhm,
for that kind of thing. Like once in a while, I can pop out a good drawing of a Hulk or something like that if one of my nephews or something like that needs something. But
yeah,
the artwork is beyond me and that kind of shit.
yeah,
I think we were talking about. I was on the Dork Forest podcast and we were talking about Marvel stuff. That was
yeah,
exciting.
yeah. It got me in a direction where I thought maybe you had done something for them.
No, I wish, man. I
Have
we
you ever
talked.
done
I
any?
think
Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say. I think on that podcast, there's a good 30 minutes where I just talk about Nightcrawler for like.
Yeah,
there's no.
yeah,
There's no.
yeah. That one, that's actually a pretty good episode. I like that. Have
Thanks.
you ever been on TV? Have you ever done any acting type stuff?
No, I've never done any acting on TV. I did just do a short film that's on Amazon Prime right now called Dup It, but I wrote it and starred in it, so that's
Mhm.
convenient
Well,
for me. I didn't
yeah,
want to star in it though either. I'm not. I don't. I've taken acting classes. I've done that kind of stuff, but
mhm.
I like the stand up more.
Let's talk about that while we're on it, because that was the first thing that I looked at by you,
Oh,
and I really really enjoyed it. So
thank you.
I've watched that more than I watched your DC improv set, and then I've actually listened to it instead of watching, just to get different feels of it. So
Wow.
how first of all, how did that come about?
That came about from so I mean I've kind of dealt with depression most of my life, in different stages, various forms, and kind of like throughout high school or whatever. And I have a close knit group of friends and we've talked about it together. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you can probably just tell from talking to me now. Like you wouldn't. I don't think you would know that
Mhm,
that I would ever be or whatever. And that's fine. That's kind of the way I like it. But one of my really close friends who I lived with him for a long time too is one of my best friends. Um, we would joke around about that kind of stuff all the time, and we were like just dealing with a bout of it at one point and just trying to describe our experiences. And I was just kind of like, yeah, it's basically like waking up with a like if a dude's just sitting on your fucking chest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, you know, just slaps you awake in the morning and you know, or like punches you in the gut and like that kind of stuff. And then we were kind of joking around and we were like, it'd be really funny if that was like the roommate, like your depression is your shitty fucking roommate. And
Mm.
he's just constantly just there and telling you horrible shit. He's never around when your friends are around. And so we kind of got around to playing with that. And then I started to write it. And then other stuff kind of came up and whatever. And then I was out in LA for a bit. I was living out there and that was like peak when my depression like kicked in to a very, very extreme point. You know, bad thoughts, like, so, you know, like really, really, I was super alone when I was out there. I didn't want to admit that I was, you know, having problems either at the time,
Mhm.
but like everything had kind of hit at that point. And um, like before that, like my parents lost their house in Sandy. And
Mhm.
around that same time, I was dating somebody for a while that I thought was going to be it. You know what I mean? And we had a great run and we really loved each other and all sort of crap. And then that kind of fell apart. There was some cheated. She cheated. You know, there was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with that in that respect. And it was long distance, so the strain was emotionally unbearable.
Mhm.
Um, Sandy happened. My parents were my mom and stepdad at the time. The strain of that kind of forced them to separate. Literally had to move them both in the different locations after they lost their house and had to move them somewhere else. There
Wow.
was just a bunch of stuff I wasn't dealing with at the time, and somebody who's I think prone to be, you know, depressed or whatever, I was just compartmentalizing stuff after stuff after stuff,
Mhm.
and then never really dealing with it at the time because there was no time to. You know what I mean? My roommate and I were, you know, we didn't lose anything because we were in an apartment that was on the second floor. We almost lost our cars, but you know, we just I lost my job, the part-time job that I still had, and my career was not really going anywhere in particular at the time either. So
Mhm.
it felt like I was just losing everything that I had, but still never acknowledging it.
All right.
And then tried to move past that, and then that kind of triggered some like really bad. It was the weirdest thing. I know this is going on like forever, but like it was this weird chain um, of events that happened where it triggered some kind of stomach stuff that I guess I'd always had. I had exacerbated it to the point. So all this crap was happening to me at the same time. I tried to get over it a little bit. Had a couple other tried to build other relationships after that. Did not work out. And then I felt like stuff was kind of moving away. So I decided to make a giant move, which is always somewhat of a mistake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was good that I did it, but also probably not the best idea to do it in the mental state I was in. But I
Mhm.
did. I got to a point where I was strong enough to like decide this is my last summer here. At the end of August, I'm moving out to LA. And I did. And
Mhm.
my manager had set up some stuff. And in the very beginning, it was constantly moving because I had written a bunch of pilots and stuff that I had to pitch. I had meetings with every major network when I was out there. I was doing some stand up. I got passed in the clubs, the Ice House, and comedy store, like places I wanted to be in. And then, of course, you know, that kind of stuff died down.
Mhm.
And then it was just me by myself. And then and then everything that I was not dealing with when you're just living in a, you know, renting a room with no air conditioning and the fucking and a heat, it just comes out. And also health wise, like before that, I'd always been, you know, either skinny or cut or in really good shape, but like the stomach stuff that was going on that I didn't know what was happening because when I would go to the doctor because I didn't know, they misdiagnosed. So I was on different medication for way too long that wasn't dealing with what the actual issue was. So literally, I was like, the depression was crippling because the anxiety was so bad. I actually did have something going on physically with stomach stuff. All the crap that I'd never dealt with before came rushing to the forefront, and it started to affect the only thing that made me happy, which was performing.
Mhm.
Because of the anxiety and shit, I would actually lose my voice when I was talking. So I was like, okay, so you're waking up in pain and headaches every day. Your stomach is completely fucking wrecked. You're alone. You've got no money. You're spending money on credit. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to survive out here.
Mhm.
Nothing seems to be clicking yet. And I was also forgetting material when I was on stage because I was just it was just part of the anxiety.
Yeah.
So I was like, and the one thing that you have that you enjoy doing that was kind of an escape, you can no longer do. So in my head, I was like, it's time to call it quits. And I
Yeah.
would struggle with that the entire time. And I think for the most part, one of the things that kept me going, I had a couple friends that I had met out there. So it was kind of weird because they'd call and they'd be like, hey, on Thursday night, do you want to go get dinner? And it'd be like Monday. And I would not have gotten out of bed or
Mm-hmm.
moved. And I would have been like, yeah, I think I can get myself together by Thursday. Like where I was like, because I also have like I love my friend. I don't want to disappoint anybody. So there's that in the back of my mind. And I never told my manager what was going on. So like he would call and be excited because he'd be like, hey, we got this meeting with Fox, or I met with Disney Animation and stuff too. And I had this animated pilot that my friends had. So like there was stuff going on. So I would go, okay, I'm gonna do this and just do that today. I'm gonna be this guy today, and then I'm gonna go right back to bed.
Yeah.
So it was truly brutal. There was some other stuff going on. Yeah, it was not good times. So
Yeah.
then when I came after 2 years, when I came back from LA, I told my writing partner Vinny Nardiello, who I mentioned earlier, whatever, a really close comedian friend of mine, who was a great writer, about the depression.
Mm.
Lost you. Still there?
Yeah, I lost you for a sec.
Yeah, I don't know where my video went.
Huh. Oh,
Oh, there we go.
you're back.
Oh, and now I can't hear you.
Okay. How about now?
There we go. Okay.
Uh,
Damn.
I'm
That'll
gonna
be the part where we cut, take a commercial break. The little hot
yeah.
dogs will come out and dance.
Well, I think I'm gonna ditch StreamYard. I mean, this is like the third interview that it just totally fucked me. So I think I'm gonna end up looking for another way to do this because it's just not working.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm fuck StreamYard. No, I'm just kidding. But so yeah, so I told him about it and I was like, yeah, and I'd started writing it already. And then I was like, would you want to come in on this? And then as we were writing it, I'm a huge fan of the Muppets, love the
Mhm.
Muppets. He loves the Muppets. We'd always reference them, talk about them and stuff. And as we were kind of writing it, we realized it would kind of be difficult to find um, somebody to do. It would be kind of difficult to get another guy to do it, play the invisible roommate type of thing or like the imaginary thing. So we went in a completely opposite direction. We were like, and I was like, I have this puppet that my friend got me. And I was like, we were like, what if it was a Muppet? What if it was like a puppet? And then we decided to call it Duppet
Mhm.
because it's a depression puppet.
Yeah.
And so we designed it to look exactly like me. One of my friends who's an amazing puppeteer and has experience with that. I handed it to him, and we kind of had some ideas of the hair we wanted it to look like. We found I mean I worked out before this, so I have a hat on, but my
Yeah.
hair is way too long, haven't gotten it cut. But for my pictures or whatever, I have a lot of hair. So we found an Elvis wig, a child's Elvis wig we
Mhm.
found online on Amazon, and bought it and showed it to me, and I was like, oh, that's fucking good. And I'd wanted the guy, the puppet to kind of be a slovenly version of, like it's reflecting who you feel, what you feel like inside. So guinea
Yeah.
tea on, all that stuff. So we designed it, and he restuffed it. It's amazing. It look obviously you've seen it. It looks
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. It looks really
And yeah. So Vinny and I wrote it together, um, and then at the time, a friend of mine was doing some kind of short film project thing and invited me on board to do it. And we were looking for the first project, and I was like, I already have something done and written if we want to work, if we want to do that. And they shot it beautifully, and they're amazing cinematographers and stuff. So they shot it, and we all helped out and did it. It was the hardest thing I think they've done to this day, and we've certainly I've ever done or we've ever done, because
Mm.
I had like 9 we were like ambitious about, I had
Yeah.
like 9 different locations
Yeah.
we wanted to shoot. And there was some stuff we actually had to wind up cutting out of the original one because, it just couldn't be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was like, no, like it's pans in. And they're like, pans in. What are
Yeah.
you talking about? But the stuff that we did, like the running with him, we had to put my buddy in a cart. I think there's some pictures of that online somewhere. We had like a little red wagon. Um, it was my friend's kid's red wagon or whatever. We had to pull him along while he was doing the puppet stuff and while I was running. So it was hard, but it was good, and we're all really proud of it. And,
Yeah.
but that's where all that kind of comes from.
So before getting into some of the stuff that I liked about that, do you feel like that when you put this into an art form, when you made something about it, were you able to look at your depression in a different way and make yourself better?
Um, I don't think you ever get. Yeah, well, I don't want to say you never get better, but like so I think at the time when it finally wound up coming out, I was a little bit better than I had been. It took a
Mm,
long. It was almost 4 years in that state, and only getting like with little dips in between of like stabilization
mm,
and whatever it was. But coming out of it, I always try to think about how I wound up doing it. And I think it was just being persistent about trying to work it out in my head at the same time and moving forward and leaning on, friends and stuff when I
mm.
can, even without telling them what was going on. It's still, when somebody picks up the phone, that's sometimes the best thing, even if you're not addressing what's bothering you. It's just nice to have,
Right.
somebody there to talk about anything else to than what's
Mm,
going on in your head.
yeah.
Um, so, but I think when I was kind of working on it, it crystallized it a little bit more too, and you know, helped with the putting in some jokes and some humor to it and stuff like that. Because I know for a lot of people, but a lot of people are overly sensitive about certain topics, and I totally respect it and I get it or whatever. But I think for a lot of people too, once you can make a joke about something, it just breaks whatever it is, no matter what it is, down to make it not as serious
Hmm.
as it is in your head. Um,
Based
so
on what
that kind of helped.
based on what you've told me, and after watching your act, you've addressed a lot of it in your act. So I can definitely make that connection.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. It is. It is. It's very, very cathartic to do that kind of stuff, and it helped me when I was younger. It helped me with awkward situations with school, even when I wasn't doing stand up. Like actually being able to think about something in a way that uh like breaks away the fear and strips everything down. I think honestly it's a weird thing. I think thinking very comedically about any particular topic that has you fucked up or worried or whatever it is in some form does help alleviate it, because all the comics that I ever admired always took, you know really serious topics, or even stuff that like that isn't really that serious, but society kind of deems, detrimental to existence. Once they
Hmm.
get a hold of it and they make it whatever, you kind of feel a little better about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to be afraid of flying when I was a kid, and I've flown since I was like 6 months old. We would had family in different parts of the country, so we'd fly all the time or whatever. And then I remember being younger and getting I would fly by myself by the time I was like 12, 13 to go visit my family in Arizona. So from, Jersey to Arizona or whatever. And I remember getting a Seinfeld's album. I'm telling you for the last time when it came out.
Okay.
And I had my first 2 comedy albums were Seinfeld and Robin Williams. And Seinfeld had a chunk about, I mean, every comedian did from the 80s or whatever on, but he had a chunk about air travel.
Hmm.
And I would pop that on as the plane was taking off into my CD player, because it just made it seem less frightening. That
Hmm.
there was a guy who was picking apart little pieces of the pilot and the stewardess
Yeah.
and the bathrooms and everything like that. It was just so calming to go. It's just everybody's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever. Like one of my favorite things I used to love, because the pilot would come on and he had that little speech or whatever. But Seinfeld's bit, I think, was, and I'm going to butcher it, it's paraphrasing, but he would come on and be like, we're going to take it up to 10,000 feet. Then we're going to drop it down to 5. And he'd be like, and we're all back there going, yeah, whatever. Fly
Yeah.
the plane. Just land where it says to land on the
Yeah.
like that was so cathartic to me because it's scary when the pilot comes on. You don't know what the fuck he's gonna
Right.
say when you're a kid,
Yeah.
or even whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like to know how things work, and I like when other people break everything down in
Mhm.
front of me if I'm whatever. And being able to do that yourself is, I think, key and very important to surviving.
Mhm. That's funny. As an aside, do you have you listened to the Seinfeld interview on Marin's podcast on WTF?
Yeah, I did. I didn't get to finish all of it, but I did listen to um I listened it to the end, and I think I missed maybe some stuff in the beginning for whatever, because when you're kind of
Yeah.
distracted when you listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
But I did listen to it, so whatever you're
Yeah.
saying, I might remember it.
It's funny. I've always liked Marin because I'm a depressed guy too, and we had similar
Hmm.
growing up situations and stuff like that where the parents were kind of in their own world and I was just existing on my own. So I understand where he comes from in that, but he missed so many opportunities in that Seinfeld interview. I mean, Seinfeld was not going to talk about how broken he is, because he's not broken. So
No.
and that's an anomaly as far as comics are concerned. Most of us have something wrong with us, and
Hmm.
something happened to us. We've got depression, we got some sort of mental illness, whatever.
Hmm.
And but he wasn't going to go there, and Marin did that for 2/3 of the interview, trying to get him to do that. And when he could have been talking about his writing process and how he does new material and stuff like that, and it just didn't go there. It was such a missed opportunity. I just wanted to grab Marin and just shake him.
I think he tried, though. Like I could feel the visceral frustration that he had when talking
Oh
to him, and
yeah,
he kind of did address it a couple times. But
yep,
I liked that interview a lot, but it did give me somewhat of like, I'm like, is my fucking heartbeat like
yeah,
palpitation? You know what I mean? Because I
yeah.
was just like, you could tell it was tense, but I could also tell that they both enjoyed it. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like Seinfeld's unflappable. He's unmovable about a
Yeah,
certain thing. Here's the thing, though. I think like what Jerry said at the end too is like he is um when he has a point that he's making, or somebody asks him a question and he's immovable there. But it depends on whether or not, like, because he at the end of it he was like, because Marin was like, yeah, when you have an opinion about something, or when it's not, you're done. You kind of cut it off. And then Jerry was like, well, ask me something else about, like, because it
yeah,
seems like Jerry's willing to, but he was like, well, yeah, but if you still want to go, then fucking, then
yeah,
ask me.
yeah.
Um, so I respect them so much for both of those things. Because here's another thing too. I don't or like prescribe to the philosophy that you have to be broken to be a comedian, and I kind of hate that that's what people lean into,
Hmm.
because I think people who think they're fucked up and don't deal with whatever they're going through then think that they're gonna do then this stuff's funny, and it's gonna take it out on stage and do whatever with it. The only problem with that is that it doesn't solve or fix you or help you grow as a person.
Right.
You just have latched onto an identity that doesn't even really exist for you yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're only doing open mics. So
Hmm.
not only you're not working on yourself, but you're not getting any better as a comic, because you're literally opening up your fucking diary, and you think that this is going to heal you somehow,
Yeah.
because you're just and it you know I don't think it does. I don't think it does at all. And I actually don't even consider myself to be like, I know I can fall into depression pretty easily, if I don't pay attention or watch or take care of if I don't, if I'm not aware of it.
Hmm.
And I try to be aware of it as much as possible. Like I think you said before, did you get better? I don't think when you're dealing with depression you ever get better. I think it's
Right.
always there, and I
Hmm.
think it always winds up coming back a little stronger each time if you let it.
Hmm.
I'm not an expert in it too, and I don't do the whatever, but I don't consider myself to be like this broken person that does things because A, B, C, and D. I think I have that problem. I think it can fuck people up, and I think you do kind of, there's a risk of making poor decisions or doing that kind of stuff because your mental state isn't there. But I think I am more the other person, and that's a struggle too. Is I think in the very beginning, and especially when you're young too, you think you have to choose between who you are when you're depressed or who you are when you're better, and that there's one of you is fake. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think you're more of whoever you're trying to be and not who you are at your worst.
Right.
And so I think when people kind of learn to deal with that a little bit better or kind of acknowledge it instead of leaning in towards it, because I think they tend to go, this is who I am, accept who I like. People who fall into that category or are depressed or anxiety ridden don't tend to want to, they think acceptance of those things is the best way to go instead of going, I don't want to be this way. How do I fix it? Because that's been most of my life, is how do I fix this thing and how do I get to be who I want to be?
Right.
And
And
I don't like, and
I feel like it's not only an acceptance with some comics that I know and some that I've seen. It's almost an embracing,
mm-hmm,
and you like you said, you're leaning into it, and you need to be depressed in order to get more material.
mm-hmm,
So you just start this awful cycle that
yeah,
you end up at the end of it being much worse off than when you started.
totally. And that's a myth too, though. I have never been, I've never been like, I've always been funny and I've always been able to do my act or whatever it is in spite of being whatever the mood is. That's just what the job requires anyway. That's any job though. You go into
Yeah.
any fucking job no matter what you're feeling like and you do that
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Maybe more or less to the, to the effectively or whatever it is, right?
Mm,
But I don't think I've been more funny when I was suicidal. I think I've been more funny when I'm in a better mood and I'm willing to let people in and I'm willing to experience stuff and find joy in it and
yeah.
everything. I think that's a weird fucking myth that people latch onto. And mostly I think comedians know that. I think people just starting or don't know it
Mm,
because they're still looking to be like, to have a reason for the way they are instead of just going like, look, we're all fucking human and for some reason my brain doesn't work the way
yeah.
it should. Whose does at a certain point, or whatever. But
Mm,
um, there's not a good. There's no. It's hard to admit that kind of stuff, and it's a fucking process. I think.
right. There's a couple things about Duppet that just really struck me. The one thing you said when you're talking to the therapist, you said, "I don't want to kill myself. I just don't have any connection to staying alive," and
Mm,
that was, I I've heard different ways of saying, I don't want to die. I just don't like, but the way you said having a connection to staying alive, I thought that was like poetic for me. I thought the way that was written was just a perfect way to say what depression is, and I just wanted to tell you good job for that, because I've never
thank you.
heard it exactly like that, and for some reason that really struck me.
So thanks. And a lot of those conversations, like when we had that part of the dialogue or whatever. So when I was severely depressed or whatever like that, I wrote down some stuff because they always tell you like to write down your thoughts, which
Mhm.
is better or worse sometimes too, because you find that shit later and you're like, holy fuck, and but it does. I don't know exactly what the purpose of it is. Sometimes it helps because it gets it down on paper and it's not in your head. I think that's the most idea. I'm putting this over for here and it doesn't
Mhm.
get to live with me for the rest of the day. Um, but that line and everything else came from, I had written it when I'd written that out when I was not doing that great. And there's a lot of dialogue and stuff that came from pieces of my own thoughts in my own brain when I was going through it. And that's what it kind of felt like, because I think at some point when I got past a certain point, I was like, I actually don't want to do this because I know it's going to affect everybody else. Like, I understand why people do it.
Mhm.
I'm not even trying to remotely, I don't even like, I get it 100%. But I think for me, it was always like, I don't actually want to do this thing, but
Mhm.
I actually don't want to be here. So
Right.
it was a real big struggle to come to terms with that too. And then but it's part of my process anyway. It was going, or just kind of coming to terms with like, look, yeah, this is how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and how am I going to live this way, knowing that and feeling this way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's good. Like I've still been trying to work on that thought process and what that means, and if it's something I can live with, or if something I have to get past or whatever it is. I'm not necessarily there yet. um but I think there's another part in that too, where I was saying like, when you're kind of floating it feels like you're floating in an ocean, and you've got these little, when you're depressed, you got life, you're always a second away from drowning, and you've got
Yeah.
life preservers, and you're bouncing from one thing to the other. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that's what it felt like when everything else slowly got stripped away. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I had no window to climb out of, or nowhere to go.
Right.
So it gets really like kind of difficult.
Yeah, and like I said, the way you expressed it was just fantastic. The other thing that really got me is when it's towards the end, when you're having dinner with your friends and after the show, and they end up having their own duppets.
Mm,
And that is one thing for people who are struggling with depression is we get very insular. We get very inward thinking, and we don't notice what's going on with the people who are closest to us. And
yeah.
I thought that really nailed it. And sometimes when you do notice what's going on with the people that's closest to you, you actually can put your own bad thoughts aside and be a helper.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not, and that's a great feeling to have too. It's so weird because it's literally the expression "misery loves company,"
Yeah.
but it is kind of bizarre because it's it's not in a malicious way. But as soon as you find out that somebody else is also, it's just about not being alone.
Hmm.
And that was another thing we tried to really emphasize hard in Duppet, is that communication and the acknowledgement that you are not going through these things by yourself is a huge fucking relief,
Hmm.
because depression is designed to break you down, to make you feel like there is no one else in the world who's going to understand what's going on, or there's anybody else that cares. And it's it's in spite of, that's the thing, when like whenever there's depression awareness thing going on, or people will tweet out some stuff where they're like, hey, if you're depressed, give us a call, or whatever the hell it is. And I'm like, you don't understand. There is no one that you're thinking you can call at that
Yeah.
point. Like I always try to emphasize the other end of that is just reach out to just fucking call your friends or
Hmm.
your family or whatever it is. You don't even have to necessarily ask them, are you sad? You know what I mean? But just to reach out, because
Hmm.
whether people knew it at the time or not, when people called me when I was out in, LA or whatever, and I was by myself, that helped incredibly.
Yeah.
And they don't know it because I didn't actually say,
Right.
you know, thank you, or whatever it is, and they can, but yeah, it's about breaking that kind of stuff down. We wanted to have that scene. That was one of the scenes we couldn't actually do what we wanted to do because of, but in the script it's written where the camera's supposed to actually pan out, like he realizes his friends have it, and then everybody else in the restaurant is sitting next to their own puppet.
Oh yeah.
So it's supposed to be a full scene, and we might actually do that if this ever gets picked up as a series. But we wanted to actually have it pan out, and he kind of just looks around and sees like the waitress has got one, the guy at the table, everybody kind of has one,
Yeah.
because everybody, whether it's in whatever form it's in, everybody's got fucking something,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and we're all just kind of struggling to deal with it.
Right. That I you just did it very well.
Thank you.
I was very impressed with it. So this has been heavy.
Yes, but luckily it's almost dinner, so we'll be having food, and
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
you and I. That's going to
Yeah.
be unfortunate, but
Right. Right.
I'll probably go get a sandwich.
I think I'm doing leftovers tonight, but
Nice.
yeah. But one thing I like to ask all the comics that I have on is there three things that you know now about being a stand-up comic that you wish you would have known when you started?
Three things. I wish. Let's see. Um, I think one thing I wish I knew then, that I know now, is that it's not as important where you perform just as long as you get up to do it.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of emphasis, I think, on like the holy ground, like the stature of clubs, and there's really only like 4 or 5 top comedy. I mean, in
Yeah.
like the fucking country that are
Right.
like, you know, like
Mhm.
they're really perceived, and the rest, like any other business, tries to make themselves out to be whatever. But I think it can be intimidating, and I think it was in the beginning and stuff like that, and whatever. But I think I would have told myself to relax about where I was and just work on me and the act, and because no one particular set is going to make you huge or break you.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's club owners to this day that don't remember I performed in their club, and there's audience like, and
Yeah.
that's, I think it may be a second thing too, is maybe not to carry the weight of a bad set with you as long as it is, because yeah, there's 200 people in that room who fucking hated you that night, but
Mhm.
they have no clue who you are.
Yeah.
I think relishing the anonymity you have,
Yeah.
which will flow into the third thing too, is don't fucking post everything
Yeah.
on the internet.
Yeah.
Videos, clips, stand up. There are so many comics I see now who will post so eager to post their first set, and their first set has no laughs and
Yeah.
destructured bad jokes. And I'm like, why the fuck would you want that out there? I never did that when I was. I always made sure whatever the set was, had or something in the background. But I see a lot of that, and I also like I would rather not have posted. Like I try to post every video, every fucking thing you have on there.
Right.
And just relish the anonymity a little bit. Give yourself 5 fucking years where you are not on the internet and just working out shit in the club.
Yeah.
It's hard though, because now it's even more heavily ingrained than it was back then.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So now it's like your Instagram story's got to feature you doing a fucking 5-minute set,
Yeah.
or you didn't do comedy that night.
Yeah. Yep. No
But
doubt.
seriously, I think people should relish, not having nobody know who the fuck you are, because it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Right. Those are
Like
good.
you get so many. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you are. So we've got
Sure.
Duppet.
Go
That's
ahead.
on YouTube and Amazon. Is there anything else
Yes.
that you'd like to talk about?
I have no shows coming up, so normally I would plug a date. I got nothing.
Drawings from a
Everything.
Nobody. That is that on
Drawings from a
Amazon?
nobody.
Can you order that on
Yeah,
Amazon?
you can order that on
Okay.
Amazon. Yeah, and I think through my website too. I'm not sure if it's still available on there, but on Amazon you can. And yeah, I guess just follow me on. I like Instagram more than anything else. So if you want to follow me on Instagram.
Okay.
And I'm working on something. I don't know when it's going to be out, but it's kind of like a bizarre take on a talk show called Dystopia Tonight, and it's
Okay.
set post-apocalyptic. So this it's just about a dude who's trying to do a show while the world burns.
Yeah. That sounds good. I like that.
Thank you. It's going to be fun when it's actually finished. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I would get into. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for being on, John. I know we got really deep, but that's
Fine by me.
comics like to get deep. So
Yeah.
much deeper than Jerry and Mark got. So
but we're also making much less money. So
yeah,
honestly,
yeah, no doubt.
who's the winner here?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're both doing all right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much
Yeah.
for being on. I will post the Duppet link in the show notes, and also I want to post a link to that set that I watched, the DC
Sure.
Improv set, if you don't mind. Just
No,
because, like I said, I feel like that's a good 101 for a new comic to watch on how it works
you.
when you follow the rules of comedy. Start out strong, start out short, and then get into your thing. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for being on. And this will actually, I think we're looking at like 2 to 3 weeks before this one comes out.
Okay.
I put them out on Friday.
Sweet.
And the video I'm going to have available, so I can send that to you if you ever want to cut that up and use it for anything promo wise.
That would be great.
So this video will be available. I'll just pop that in my OneDrive and send it over to you. And then when this comes out, I'll just shoot you a message, an email letting you know that it's out, and you can share it and stuff.
Yeah, I'll plug it, push it everywhere.
Yeah, things have been. I forgot to go off live.